So let me introduce to you the panel. I'm Judith Richards. I'm the creator of the Richards Trauma Process, or TRTP. This evening, we're not going to go into the ins and outs and details of TRTP, what it is and how it works. We'll just give you a quick synopsis. The purpose of this interview webinar is to hear from some of the practitioners, some people who I've trained who are doing fabulous work, stepping people through to the other side of their pain, people with PTSD, physical pain, anxiety and depression. We have Barry Eaton. I'd like to introduce Barry. Hi, Barry. Hi. Barry's an ex-ABC broadcaster on television and radio. He's a wonderful interviewer. And can I just say, Barry interviewed me for his own internet radio program just the other day. So for those who want further information, there's an audio radio interview on Barry's program, Radio Out There. And that will be going to air. When's that going to air, Barry? Just this evening?
No. In about 24, 25 hours time.
Oh, 25 hours.
Yeah, probably about 7, 8 o'clock tomorrow night. That's Eastern time, Sydney time.
Okay, Sydney time, daylight saving time, which is soon to finish. But and you can get the recorded version of that. That will be available on Barry's website. Barry has a wealth of experience across media. So Barry will be interviewing us here. I will introduce Rosemary Boone. Rosemary is a leader in the area of neurofeedback. Rosemary does extraordinary work with people with learning disabilities, people on the spectrum, and you'll be hearing more from Rosemary. She has an extensive background. She's a psychologist. She's done extensive studies in neuroscience and biochemistry. A wealth of knowledge, information, experience and expertise is Rosemary. Dr. Helen Massell is a clinical psychologist in Melbourne. Helen came to the training a couple of years ago and has been working with TRTP extensively since then in her private practice. And Carol Young from the Blue Mountains is with us. Carol is a physiotherapist who has worked for many, many years in rehab and work cover. So she has a different slant on this, and also in terms of physical pain and TRTP. That's an interesting topic. So there we are. I will hand over now to Barry Eaton. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, thanks, Judith. Well, you asked me to talk to various people. I think we should go back to you for a moment. I think everybody's got a fair idea of what TRTP is, but how long have you been practicing it yourself?
That's a good question, Barry.
You've forgotten.
You wouldn't believe it if I told you. No, I brought it together and started using it at the beginning of 2012.
Okay. And you've been teaching it virtually full-time since then?
No, 2014, July 2014 was the first group that went through. It's interesting that the psychiatrist in that group cleared her books during the 8 weeks of the training, so much so that one of the receptionists, in the group of receptionists at the big medical centre where she worked, they sent a delegation to ask her, what are you prescribing now? Is it legal? And are we implicated by being on the premises? Because we've been seeing some of your patients coming for many, many years and now they're walking out well. So are we in trouble? So that was a great result first up for her.
Yeah, okay. So the people that you've been teaching to, the people who've graduated from the course and are now practitioners, what kind of range of practitioners have you qualified out there?
We have a lot of psychologists, psychotherapists, social workers, counsellors, the usual mental health professionals. We have some psychiatrists, we have some GPs, we have a number of anaesthetists, Barry. And we also have people like Carol, physiotherapists, we've got some paramedics, nurses. The nurses are fabulous, midwives dealing with birth trauma, of course, and some other really fabulous nurses who are down to earth, practical and very intuitive and do very well with this work. So we have across the board. We have some other body workers as well. but that's the general gamut.
Okay, well, looking down our list of panelists here, we've certainly got a cross-section of the health community there, and a lot of nurses, as you said, but also I think there's even a yoga teacher there as well, so we're getting the word out.
Yes, yeah, that's right, Barry. A yoga therapist, I think.
A yoga therapist, yes. Oh, okay.
Someone who works one-on-one.
Annabelle puts herself down as a yoga teacher, so there you go.
There you go. Who are joining us? Yes. Sorry, I thought you meant in terms of our practitioners who go through the training.
I'm talking about the lovely people who are watching.
Oh, the people who are here. Yes. Yeah. And Chris Prell, a registered nurse, energy healer. Yeah.
Why is it that when you go on air and you mute your telephone, some idiot tries to ring you at the same time? Go away.
You tell them, Barry.
I just did. It's incredible.
Excellent.
I've muted my phone. Oh, dear. That's it. All right. So is there anything else you want to say now, or shall I?
Well, if I just give an outline to those who don't know TRTP of what it is. TRTP is generally a 3-session process, 3 longer sessions. It's 3 up to 2-hour sessions, usually about an hour and a half, that resolves even the most extreme trauma and PTSD, as well as anxiety and depression at all levels, from garden variety anxiety disorders and depression disorders up to extreme. It does it in 3 sessions. It does it quickly, effectively, and safely without re-traumatizing. And it is long lasting. I've followed some people for 7 years now, and they're still continuing to reap the benefits of doing the process. Where it came from is through my own experience, through a ridiculous life with a lot of distressing events, a lot of trauma. So I worked my way up through the hierarchy of violent lunatics until I found myself with a homicidal psychopath who was into torture. And for 9 years, I suffered there. So I got cut up a lot. I've lost a lot of my insides. But here I am, despite the odds. And I had a complete PTSD breakdown. I had split personality. I was living in hallucinations. And I found a way through. And out of that came TRTP. And it's a longer story than that, but that's the nutshell.
Well, the longer story, don't forget, everybody can get on radioutthere.com as of tomorrow night. And Judith is very, very frank, very open. And I think that's the wonderful thing about you, Judith, that you've bared your soul, really, to everybody. And as such, having gone right back to basics, you are able then to help so many people. So I think that really stands out.
Yeah, it's great, Barry. We've got about 200 practitioners across Australia now, and I don't know how many lives we've saved so far.
Yeah. All righty. Well, look, let's meet some of the panelists now and find out their involvement and see what they're up to. First of all, let's try Carol. Carol, what drew you to TRTP in the first place?
Well, it actually found me, Barry. I wasn't looking for a trauma therapy approach. As Judith mentioned, my background is as a physiotherapist working in rehabilitation under the workers' compensation system. Now, iCare is the manager of that system. And I found that, that the strong link between adverse life events and depression was one of the major barriers to successful outcomes for my clients. Major trauma with car accidents and work accidents was very common, and I was incredibly frustrated at the lack of effective and cost-effective services for people who had depression, anxiety, and stress, which was almost everybody that I saw. Because I used to see and still do see a lot of the difficult cases. And to my enormous frustration, I found that most of these people were seeing psychologists and had been seeing psychologists for months, if not years, with little benefit other than they've quite enjoyed, felt good having someone to talk to. But because we're so cost-driven in the workers' compensation system, I just felt that was a really, a very impractical solution to have people going to psychologists for months and months and months and not having effective outcomes. So I came across TRTP as just a serendipitous moment. An old colleague of mine recommended it. She knew Judith and had seen Judith at work and had seen the results she was getting. And she made a little comment on a Facebook comment saying, you got to look at this stuff works. And for some reason, it really just resonated with me, and particularly because she said 3 sessions. And I thought, you know what, if she's right, I'm really got to have a look at this, because this could completely transform the way that we deal with chronic depression, anxiety, PTSD, and chronic pain, which of course as a physiotherapist I was involved in. So that's what drew me to it. It was mostly the promise of a quick and cost-effective treatment, and to my surprise, my delight, it delivered all of that.
Fair enough. Now, you mentioned about psychologists. We have a couple with us on the panel. So, first of all, Helen, how do you react to that? You're a very empathic clinical psychologist, I have listed down here. So how do you react to the fact that ongoing psychology was not able to help some of Carol's people, but the TRTP certainly has?
Hi, Barry, and hi, everyone. Welcome. And I get it. I think that's in some ways similar to why I was interested in TRTP. So I've been a psychologist for, say, 25, 30 years now, and all psychologists are trained in CBT, and then most of us, I think, continue to find other forms of treatment just to sort of find that one that's going to really help and do it quickly. Ironically, I was actually sort of known for having the patience and tolerance to do the long-term work. And, you know, over time, over years, people started to tick off the symptoms and then get back into life and be engaged. But there was something missing, that they still didn't really either like themselves very much, or they were still sabotaging efforts to get on with life. And so I just kept thinking that there was something that we haven't quite got. And the other thing was that with trauma, I was very aware that talking about traumatic events wasn't the way to go, but I wasn't really quite sure what else to do. And when I read about the TRTP process, I thought, this could be it. And as Carol says, short, focused, safe, and the safety aspect of it really resonated with myself, you know, in terms of do no harm. And yeah, the rest is history.
Right. You said you read about it. Does that mean you Googled it, or somebody told you? How did you find out about TRTP?
Yeah. I think it came in an email feed through the APS, I think.
Okay.
And I'd seen it a few times, and you get a lot of new treatments and sort of processes, and I was just looking through, and I just one day I must have been in that moment where there's something missing here, and there's got to be something out there, and I read it and it just really resonated.
It's amazing.
It's my practice.
Yeah, a little bit of synchronicity. It doesn't go astray anywhere, does it? Rosemary, what about you? How did you come to TRTP?
Well, Barry, that's a really weird question. Well, it's not a weird question, but
sorry.
I went looking for something, because as you've heard from Carol and Helen, I wasn't quite satisfied with what I was doing, even though I was doing a lot of brainwave training, a lot of EEG, a lot of working with alpha theta training for PTSD. I was working with a lot of traumatized kids who were presenting as ADHD children. And while what I was doing was effective, it was taking just too long. And I needed a way to speed it up, and CBT was not the answer for traumatized children. So I booked myself into the Australian Hypnosis Conference in Sydney, and there was a talk that Judith was giving, and I thought I'd go and have a listen. And she did a practical demonstration, and I thought, there's something to this. And I just followed my gut and my intuition and thought, I need to explore this. So I think I was on the very next course, and I've had the most incredible success stories with children, with ADHD children, with children on the spectrum, with adults on the spectrum, with all sorts, with depression and anxiety. but particularly with trauma and childhood neglect. And in neuroscience, we have a saying that neurons that fire together wire together. So there was absolutely no point in me redoing the trauma again and again and again in talk therapy and having those networks even more reinforced. So with Judith's TRTP, I found a quick, non-invasive way to set them free, I guess, and to allow them, to give them the opportunity to forge their own life and have what they needed and be able to nurture themselves.
Yeah, fair enough. Did any of you have any misgivings when you first got onto TRTP? Carol, what about you?
Well, Judith was claiming a lot.
She's like that. Yeah.
She talks big.
But she delivers big, though, doesn't she?
She delivered big. Yeah, got to say that. But look, I knew what the extent of the problem was in Australia, and I might just mention now that there was a paper that I had read, which was around the same time that I came across TRTP by the independent think tank in Canberra called the Australia 21 Institute, and they did a paper in 2016 called Trauma-Related Stress in Australia, saying this is just such a huge problem. The cost to the economy is something like $14 to $15 billion a year for people who miss work as a result of stress and work-related stress and personal stress. And it said in there that a cost of around $15,000 per kind of intervention was considered to be a good outcome if that could turn around someone's sort of mental health condition. And I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of money, when I know that TRTP you can have between sort of $1,000 and $2,000 maximum. You get the same incredible outcome. So I was really driven by the economic argument of something that could deliver. And my goal, actually, I said to Judith when I signed up, I said that my goal is to try and get iCare in New South Wales to take a look at this therapy as an incredibly cost-effective way to go compared to cognitive behavioural therapy, which seems to be the go-to still for PTSD and mental health conditions. And they, of course, are going to be wanting evidence, and we started collecting evidence around TRTP to deliver to them. But that's my goal, and I know that's going to be quite a hard slog, but I am absolutely convinced that it can be a game changer in the whole workers' compensation field.
Fantastic. What about you, Rosemary? Did you have any misgivings to start off with? Were there anything that you thought, oh, does this really work? 3 sessions and everybody's healed?
Oh, definitely. First of all, I was in awe of Judith being able to do it in 3 sessions. I thought, oh my goodness, she was describing cases that I had been struggling with. I'm thinking, okay, well, if she can do it, then the next question is, well, I can do it. Can I do it? She's been able to do it. But how do I get to deliver those same results? And I found that because she's such a fabulous teacher and she's coming from her own personal experience, and all the practice we get and all the support we get, that I was able to learn the technique and to deliver results and get enormous and have just as much success. Not as much as you, that obviously haven't done it long enough. But over the last 4 to 5 years, I have found it the most important and the most effective way of helping my clients out of their trauma and giving them that sense of ease and empowering them. And but my misgiving was, it's too good to be true. There's no way I can do it. But I sat down, I listened, and I worked, and we're getting there. It's a work of art. And, each one of us, every session that we do, we get better therapists. And we have this wonderful community every Friday morning that we can just, send in our queries and get the most magnificent support. And it's absolutely brilliant to have that love and sharing and caring.
Yeah, I might talk about that a bit more later on. What about you, Helen? Any misgivings to start off with?
I guess, curiosity more than misgivings. And I'm thinking, well, you know, with CBT, people say that 8 to 10 sessions, and Medicare only provides 10 sessions anywhere. So they must be assuming that you can do work wonders in a short space of time. This is probably equivalent of 6 or 7 sessions because they're longer. And I think because it involved the sort of the full part of the mind, the unconscious as well, it sort of makes sense to me. If it's taking, if in CBT we're only really dealing with the conscious part of the mind, so this is going much deeper, and why not? 3 sessions, here we come.
Fair enough. All righty. So you've all had some kind of hesitancy, it would appear, at the very beginning, which is understandable because it's totally different to your normal therapy, but and your training and education, everything like that. What about some of the client outcomes? Rosemary, back to you. Can you come up with something that will help explain or illustrate just how this is such an amazing process?
Well, because I work with the EEG, I'm in a very fortunate position where I can map the brain before a TRTP session, right at the beginning of that first session, and then do another remap right at the end of 3 sessions. And we find that there are enormous brain changes, so that the actual brain has been rewired. All the stuff that had been coupled, the amygdala, hippocampus connections, the limbic system connections that were there, that were keeping the brain stuck in that trauma state, have actually changed as a result of TRTP. And that absolutely floored me. The first time I saw it, I sent it back to the United States to say, am I seeing the correct things? Is this possible? And my mentor in the States says, yes, absolutely. What did you do? And when I said hypnosis, they said, oh, really? And I said, well, it wasn't quite hypnosis. It was a method that involved, you know, a part of it. And so now I'm trying to collect some data to get pre and post EEGs to see the actual difference in the neural substrates, the neural pathways that have changed as a result of it. Because once you can see it and you show the person that evidence, it's like, wow, this actually did work. I mean, they know it worked, but it's lovely for us as practitioners to have that beautiful sense of before and after, that pre and post efficacy. So yes, it's been absolutely remarkable in terms of the changes in the brain. And we know that for many years, part of what Judith does is part of the hypnosis part, it's not all of it obviously, has been very good, Carol, for pain. So if we can change, and we actually change the actual connections in the brain.
Oh, can I just interrupt there, Barry? Rosemary showed me a while back an EEG before and after of a dear man who had a traumatic brain injury and complex PTSD, and he was on the spectrum. And he had various other issues and challenges, and the change in his brain functioning was extraordinary. Yeah,
amazing. Well, I know that I've already had not the trauma process, but I had cancer back in 2013. Throat cancer and cancer of the thyroid, it turned out. And Judith helped me prepare through hypnosis and through getting into my subconscious and being able to help me prepare for the grueling time that was ahead of me. And I came out the other side in total remission now. So I put a lot of that down to the way Judith helped me get ready. So, Helen, what about you? Have you got any case studies or any kind of backup you'd like to talk about?
Helen's got a beauty.
Oh, good. Okay, let's hear it.
Well, I guess sort of continuing on from Rosemary, I guess I've got the anecdotal sort of observational evidence of something happened in the brain. So I had a young woman who presented with conversion disorder, which is a sort of non-organic paralysis, so it's psychologically based, and she had a history of sexual abuse. She was unable to walk without assistance of a chair, a walker or chair, and her language was very childlike. She was in her early 20s, but when she presented, it was this childlike language to the point where her mother had to interpret for me what she was saying. So she would sort of replace normal words with sort of baby-like words. So we did the process, and initially there was a little bit of change. She also had very severe pain. She'd lost a lot of muscle was, I think, 2 or 3 years in this state, and severe pain. We did the sessions, and she noticed a little bit of sort of a shift. And then over the course of the next few months, her mother told the GP that she was actually noticing some pretty significant changes. And fast forward a year, she's just spent 3 months traveling around Australia with her mother, and I had the luxury of getting to visit her, to see her again. And she was this vivacious, articulate young woman who was just couldn't wait to be going on the next trip, which was 6 months around Australia. So it just brought a tear to my eyes seeing that.
That's
Incredible.
a huge turnaround, isn't it? Amazing.
Yeah.
And walking
Absolutely.
fine, Helen?
Walking fine.
Yeah.
Yep. She'd had a big day, and she said that she was a little tired because she virtually was losing her muscles. But yeah. Incredible.
Were you anticipating that you could make a turnaround like that when you started the treatment?
Well, I thought to myself when the client came, I thought, well, this will be the test. If I can make a change here, then I'm just going to sing the praise of TRTP forever, because it was a bit of it. I was thinking, this is a challenge. This is going to be a big one. It was so incredible.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
Mm.
You were going to say something, Judith?
No, it's just wonderful. I just hear these stories every day, Barry, so I'm in a very privileged position.
Well, yes, fair enough too. And with all your, the way you started and the way it's all branching out all over the place and heading off into other parts of the world soon, which we talk about on the radio interview, you are helping so many people around the place, and I think this is just absolutely stunning.
Well, I just applaud those early adopters who've joined us, like Carol and Helen and Rosemary. And we have this, as Rosemary said, this back-end community, and early adopters tend to be a different kind of bunch, Barry. And we have great fun, and there's irreverence and lots of humour.
Excellent. I
and incredible support too.
Yeah. All right, just before we get on to the community and the support there, Carol, can you give us an example of a case study or an outcome that stands out in your mind?
Well, I've only recently gone back into clinical practice because of TRTP. It's absolutely transformed my work and understanding of chronic pain. And I've been attending a few pain conferences with other physios who are, there's a core group, I think, on the cutting edge of understanding how the neuroplasticity of the brain can transform chronic pain work. And it's been really interesting for me. I'm just getting amazing outcomes using TRTP, because now with every chronic pain patient I do a trauma screen, and of course I haven't had one yet that didn't have a trauma history that I was able to address before we even did any work around chronic pain. So as a clinician, and look, if you told me 2 years ago I was going to go back into clinical practice, I would have said, shoot me now, because as a physio, I just was so, chronic pain and back injuries and just not, that you need to be, as a physio, the skills I think are quite limited, but they're limited in the sense that there's a particular approach. What TRTP has done for me is opened up a whole world of different approaches to treatment, including hypnotherapy, and I'm just having such a good time with it. I'm loving it, and it's a gentle therapy. It's not a deeply. There are elements of it that is serious, but it involves quite a reflective angle of looking at how you engage with the life and what decisions you want to make going forward. And I find it at times quite lighthearted. I often have a real laugh with my clients about how we're all broken in our own way, but being able to use TRTP to put things into perspective is very powerful, and there's no I haven't found any downside to it. There is nothing about TRTP that can hurt anybody. The worst thing that can happen is nothing, and I haven't had any clients who haven't benefited in some way from it, from great benefits, enormous life-changing benefits, down to, well, I feel pretty different actually. My pain's really changed. So that makes a therapist's work so much more enjoyable, because you're getting results, and as Helen said, it brings tears to your eyes when you see your clients walk out after the third session saying, you know what, my life has completely changed. And I just love it.
So
Thanks,
Carol,
Judith.
having been dragged kicking and screaming back into clinical practice, in brief, where do you see this taking you now? A whole new direction in your life and your career?
Yes, yes, Barry, I do. I'm really interested in the relationship between chronic pain and trauma. As a physiotherapist, I can justifiably get referrals from GPs for chronic pain work, and increasingly the GPs in my area around the Blue Mountains are trusting me to refer trauma work to me, which is not something that most GPs would do. So I'm growing my practice that way, and I think that there will be many other physios moving in this space, and I would encourage them to look at TRTP as it's a relatively quick training process. It was 3 days with Judith, plus, and then she throws you right into the practicalities of practicing on a number of clients. So it's very much hands-on. It's not an academic training. It's very practical and a very, very supportive community. So I enjoyed the training as a scientist, as a physiotherapist. I really enjoyed the process of the training. And I'm very excited about where this is going to take me. If I'm just doing straight TRTP, that's fantastic. But I would like to be working more with anxiety in young people, particularly adolescents. There's a tsunami of need there, it seems these days, particularly students going through HSC. The schools are hardly coping with the stress levels with young students, and TRTP is a great, fantastic offering for that. So, there's, the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Now, earlier on in the seminar, Rosemary referred to the community of TRT practitioners and gave us a little bit of an insight into that one. Before we go back to you, Rosemary, though, Helen, what have you found so far about the community?
Well, one of the enticing aspects of the training was that there was this, as Carol said, intensive training, but then there was ongoing support with a mentor, and then being part of this community. So a weekly call where we're able to discuss cases and also other avenues to be able to do that. And the support is incredible. Everyone is so positive, optimistic, constructive, but also, really able to point out, if things need to be pointed out. But it's just such a wonderful community, and everyone's on the same page, and just I've never experienced anything like that in terms of my training, and that is one of the most amazing things that Judith's created, that support. Because often you go to treatments, training, and you get all excited about this new technique, get back into your office, and it's like, whoa, I don't know how to do that. I'm going to go back to my old ways. Whereas what was wonderful about this was that there was that ongoing treatment. And as Carol said, you didn't get to just sit back and think about it for a while. In fact, I booked in 10 clients the first week, which was, that was another story. But so yeah, I forgot that they take 2 hours, so I had to extend my hours double for that. But anyway, so that was one of the most amazing things about this treatment. So you can actually put it into practice and get that ongoing support, and off you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Rosemary, you mentioned a little bit before about how the community benefits you with your Friday meetings and everything like that. Have you got anything to add to that?
Oh, no, I think it's all been said. That was one of the most important reasons why I actually kept doing the process, was that it was there anytime. You could put it up on Facebook. And the community, the wealth of knowledge is just incredible. If Judith's not around, somebody else will answer, and you'll get 10 or 12 different, ideas to try. And it's just the most, I have never, as Helen said, in all of my psychological training, including my neuroscience, ever had such a supportive community that is online once a week, regularly, without fail. And that, to me, is probably the best thing about the training course. It's continuous.
Yeah, fantastic.
It never
If I
stops.
could add one thing to that, we also have, in Melbourne anyway, we have face-to-face meetings, sort of perhaps 4 or 5 a year, and that's wonderful too. And you actually get together over a cup of tea and talk and just get to know the other practitioners. So, and then that makes it easier on the calls because you know each other, and there's just that. And also the ones that you've trained with, you've sort of got there's just a connection there through a shared experience. So it's fantastic.
And that's going to be an important part as you continue in your practice with the community.
Totally, yes.
Yeah. If I could just say something about Carol's work with pain, chronic pain, Barry, just telling the attendees, listeners here, what actually happens with pain. My theory is that at the time of the accident, for example, we produce stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, etc., and the system gets overloaded. The librarian in the brain, the hippocampus, shuts down, doesn't do its job by putting that event, once it's over, into the right manila folder, into the right file, in the right filing cabinet in the warehouse of memory, but instead it gets stored as a videotape loop that's continuously going in the unconscious. So with a lot of chronic pain, what's happening is the unconscious has this videotape loop. It's happening now, I'm in the car now, they're cutting me out of the car, I'm going to die now. The unconscious runs every chemical reaction, every electrical response in the body. So the body is stuck in that state of it's happening now. And I had this myself. I had what I used to call my falling down pain, because I would fall down. I wouldn't be able to breathe. And this time I fell down and was up close and personal with the lino in the kitchen floor where I was staying. And it occurred to me that perhaps it was just a memory. And I looked out the window to the tropical foliage and told myself, you're not in Perth where it's grey-green. You're in Queensland. He's not here. It's over and you're safe. And I just hugged myself and kept telling myself, it's over. You're safe now. And the pain went away and has never come back. And I thought, I think I'm onto something here. So with a lot of patients who, like I had a client who had been in a massive car accident, had her spine full of hardware, but she shouldn't have been bedridden with the pain. The surgeon said there was no reason for that. But so we did this process, and the next weekend she's texting me from Dream World on a roller coaster saying this is much more fun than being in bed. It's that quick to have the pain just disappear. I had a woman with multiple sclerosis who could hardly move and was about to kill herself because she couldn't take it anymore. She'd had this pain for 20 years. She just wanted another month to get her husband ready because he wasn't ready for her to commit suicide. So she asked me to reduce her pain by 5%. By the end of the session, she was running around the car park, touching her toes and screaming at her husband, Barry, it's gone, it's gone. I'm not saying that will be the same for all multiple sclerosis, but there was a particular reason for hers, which was connected to trauma. And it's a funny thing that a lot of things are simply symptoms of trauma. Anxiety is a symptom of trauma. Depression is a symptom of trauma. Because what's behind it is I'm not safe. Why am I not safe? Because of dreadfulness that's happened that's still going on in my unconscious. It doesn't break through to the conscious mind unless we're in extreme PTSD, and then it does break through in the form of flashbacks. But for lower grade anxiety and depression, it's still there. It's the same thing. So we bring we turn off those videotape loops with TRTP and bring the client from I'm not safe to it's over and I'm safe now. And the whole system is like doing a factory reboot on the phone, but we do it on the entire system. And then the physiology catches up, which is why people continue to report continual changes as time goes on. It gets even better. So anyway, that's that, but we've probably come to the end of our
Well, we have.
Time. Yeah.
It's time to turn it over to our participants to join in here, ask any questions. So, Judith, you were telling them beforehand how they can go about this. So I'm just going to return you now to
Yeah. Thanks, Barry.
Judith there, and away you go.
Thanks, Barry. So if anyone has any questions, if you would like to squiggle your cursor at the bottom of the screen, a chat icon will come up. If you click on that, there'll be a chat area to the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to ask some questions of a particular panelist or of me, Vicky Madison. Hello, Vicky. When is the next training session in Sydney? Well, Vicky, it's not going to be for a while. What we used to go to Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, everywhere. What we found was that when we would get there, only 10 to 15% of the attendees would be from that city. So we thought, well, we'll stay in Queensland. So we present at the Queensland University in Brisbane. We have people now flying in. The last course, we had someone flying from Holland, someone from the UK. We've had someone from South Africa. People are starting to come from overseas to the training. So, sorry, Vicky, but we won't be doing the training in Sydney. We do a 3-day workshop. The training is mainly online on video conference calls. We have virtual classrooms, which is a marvelous thing. So the only face-to-face requirement is the 3-day intensive workshop. So that is the face-to-face part. The rest of it can be done online. It's an 8-week program. Do you do the... Sorry, Kate. Yes, just answered that one. I forgot to add... Oh, good. Thanks, Faye. How does TRTP differ from regular hypnosis, Leslie? In every possible way is the short answer, Leslie. If you go and do any hypnotherapy course, you'll be taught how to do, for example, relaxation inductions that take some time, just relax this set of muscles. And if you have somebody in extreme PTSD and you bring them in, like Bryce, who was about to throw himself under a train. He was just back from Afghanistan on about his 5th tour, and he said, the world's fucked, everything's fucked. He was hysterical. He was about to throw himself under a train. You don't bring somebody in to your rooms and say, and just relax the muscles in the back of your neck. I know I'm being a little bit flippant, but we use hypnosis, but we don't use Ericksonian hypnotherapy, Ericksonian techniques. We use direct. It takes 2 words. We speak to the unconscious in the language of the unconscious. What is the language of the unconscious? It's the imagination, just as in dreams. As soon as we connect with our imagination, our critical facility steps aside. Our cognitive brain steps aside and anything is possible. The unconscious and the body believe what we richly imagine. If you imagine sucking into a big wedge of lemon and it's so sour and there's so much juice, your body will respond as mine has just done, as if you have just done that in reality. The body and the unconscious cannot tell the difference between what's imagined and what's real. We use this wonderful, extraordinary facility to create various scenarios to do what Levine and Van der Kolk agree must be done in order to bring someone from fight, flight, freeze, I'm not safe, to calm self-regulation. And that is, we move the person to a place of empowerment in regard to what happened, and we tell the body that it's over. We go further than Levine and Van der Kolk. We say the body and the unconscious that it's over and I'm safe now. And that's a huge resolution. So in terms of TRTP and regular hypnosis, there's really nothing in common, except that we're speaking to the unconscious, and we do it very, very directly. And we don't do the Ericksonian thing of, I don't know whether the unconscious is going to choose to do it now or next week or next year. We say, do it now, just because you can. Thank you. And it does. So we're rather direct. Rosemary, Sean Jarvie says, Rosemary, could you talk a bit more about the specifics of the effects you've seen on brain function after TRTP? Could you do that in about 4 sentences, Rosemary?
I'll try. Okay. The most important things we find is that the amygdala, the hippocampus, the limbic system, the cingulate gyrus gets reset, so that fear, that anxiety, that loop that Judith was just talking about is entirely reset, and you can actually see it in the post-EEG. The frontal lobes responsible for monitoring, motivation, mood regulation, affect regulation, all becomes more regulated. And the connectivity, the constant chatter between parts of the brain that are not functioning well decreases so that it comes down to within a normal level. And they're the things that we see consistently. Kids will say, clients will say, I'm calmer. There's a space between what happens and how I react. So it gives them the time to actually sit back and say, is this real? Is this happening? Hang on, I can choose the way to respond. That's a huge thing. That's your executive function working better and your frontal lobes online instead of your limbic system being hijacked by the fear.
Yep. Just to give, it's extraordinary the experienced change that a client has. For example, you can go on to the website, therichards.traumaprocess.com, and see a testimonial from a guy called Jason. Jason broke his neck 4 times. That I used to specialize in violent, angry men brought against their will. Jason broke his neck 4 times. He had very little movement in his torso. He had multiple morphine patches on because of the pain. He'd been on a disability pension because of it for the last 7 or 9 years. That morning he'd been pulled off his wife, trying to strangle her. He'd smashed every window in her house, every panel in her car, and broken her guitar over his head. So he had these gashes with dried blood. He came in, hardly any movement, really tall and skinny, looked like Frankenstein. And he was a very violent, angry man. By the end of that session, he had full movement in his neck and spine. I got his family who had brought him. The men in his family had him under house arrest, and they'd brought him. I got them to take him to the local psych wing at the hospital to be assessed. They let him go, said there was nothing wrong with him. That was on the Monday. By Friday, he was back at work as a panel beater, and he stays in touch regularly, sends me lots of photos. He's never been out of control anger since, and that was the beginning of 2012, so that's 7 years ago. That's the sort of result that we get consistently. The change, the experience change is miraculous. I say to a new client, we could return you to normal in terms of society, no anxiety, no depression, but why would we do that when this is your opportunity to create freaking extraordinary? Because that's what we do. Are you up for it? And it sounds arrogant, I know. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous, I know. But it's what we do every day. Just saying. So, Lisa Marie Hargis, what is the difference between TRTP and RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy?
I can answer that if you...
yes,
actually,
Carol.
I know what RTT is. That's Melissa Spears' work, which I have looked at also. I find that RTT is sort of, it's a very superficial process, and I don't think it is. It's interesting. There are similarities actually I found in some of the languaging that we use with TRTP and RTT, but it doesn't go into the real core issues of going back into the trauma as someone who is in a position of not victim. And that is the key difference with TRTP and RTT, that actual revisiting of the trauma to shift it from the amygdala back into the hippocampus doesn't happen. And there are some benefits from RTT, there's no doubt about that, but the core trauma doesn't get shifted. So, and I've looked at them both. Well, I've looked at RTT in detail too. So that's my view. Yeah, it's the sort of Mickey Mouse version of TRTP.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
Judith, there's an interesting question you may have missed earlier on, because it's down quickly from Eva in Melbourne. And I found this interesting, that any clients that are coming in on medication like antidepressants or anxiety, and were they able to go off this medication after the treatment?
Yes, we do take patients who are on medication, otherwise we wouldn't have any. So many people are on meds. Does anyone else want to say anything about that? Yes, they do go off. There was a woman with psychotic bipolar who went to one of our practitioners, Sally Ahern, and she was in a very, very fragile state. She'd been diagnosed with psychotic bipolar at 12. She'd lived a life dealing with psychosis. She was now 74. I sent her to Sally because Sally is very gentle and broke it down into smaller sections so that this lady could cope. she's gone from a truckload of meds to, I think her psychiatrist still has her on one that she's being weaned off, and this woman is completely well. So yes, we say to people, don't just stop your meds immediately. That would be stupid and foolhardy and irresponsible. So go back to your GP, give it a month, give it 2 months, and gradually wean yourself off. So yes, people do come off meds because they no longer need them. Anybody else got anything to say about that? No, just agreement.
Same experience.
Yes. Robin James, are you tracking results for people who have undergone multiple traumas? Everyone's, Robin, here's how it is, the way I see it, my model, and my model seems to work. The distress of life builds up like the pressure in a balloon, and it gets to a point where there's too much pressure and we blow out in some areas. Some go into depression, some go into anxiety, some go into both of those, some go into PTSD, some go into physical illness, some go into chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, lupus. Can I just say that TRTP is I've had so many people who immediately get relief from those issues, those terrible states. So it's not just one trauma. It's just not one thing. I mean, it may be a catastrophic event like the Black Saturday bushfires, but what we do in that case is we deal with all we say to a client, what are the top 3 to 4 most distressing events in your life? And we deal with those, because if you turn off those videotape loops in the unconscious, all the others just turn off as well. So even though the catastrophic Black Saturday bushfires is terrible, but what we do is before we get to that, we reduce the pressure in that balloon by dealing with the distress that's happened before the fire. By the time we get to the catastrophic event, it's very easy to do that. In that case, we do 4 sessions for something like that. But yes, everyone has multiple stuff. It's not just one trauma. Do you tend to deal with one trauma at a time? Do you find the layers shift together where the person experiences change holistically? Is the 3rd session protocol still all that is required? The 3-session protocol still all that is required? Yes, it doesn't matter how many. As I said, we deal with the top 3, possibly 4 of the most distressing events. So, and just note, I say distressing events, not trauma. When we think trauma, we think catastrophic event. We think war, we think refugees, but some homes are war zones, and we all have distress of bullying in primary school, things that have happened, accident, etc. So if we think distressing events instead of trauma, you get a better idea. So we deal with the top 3 to 4 most distressing events in someone's life, and the pressure in the balloon goes down. The other videotape loops turn off, and all the symptoms of a hyper-aroused system or a shutdown system of depression, hyper-aroused of anxiety or shutdown of depression, the symptoms simply disappear. I hope that's answered your question, Robin. Just because we've just got a few minutes left, there's a question to you, Rosemary. What age do you work with kids on the spectrum?
Usually 6 and above, and that really depends on their language. So they need to be able to understand. Their receptive language needs to be almost normal. Yeah. Otherwise, it isn't going to work.
Okay.
But yeah,
thank you. Rosemary can be found online at
www.learningdiscoveries.com.au.
Right, there we are. There's Rosemary. Will any courses be done in Melbourne? No, sorry. All the 3-day workshop, everything else is online, but the 3-day workshop module, the face-to-face module, is done at Queensland University at the moment. Next year, it'll be in other places, but they'll all be overseas. So,
Judith, there's one there from New Zealand.
Yes.
Is it open to non-professionals or lay people?
It depends the experience. I had a quick look at that inquiry. This person, I'm looking for it here. Okay. I have lots of other modalities under my belt. So BU is this person. So BU, it just depends on what your experience is, whether you've worked one-on-one with clients. So the best thing for you to do is to go to the website. A number of people are asking about the training. The best thing to do is to go to the website, therichards.traumaprocess.com. I'll say it again. Take a cut lunch to type it in. I know it's a long thing, but richardstraumaprocess.com. Go to the training page. You'll see the menu at the top. Click on training. There'll be a page describing all the training in detail, and there'll be a button, say, to make a 20-minute Q&A conversation, and you'll talk with somebody who can answer all your questions and to see if you are a candidate. We don't accept everyone who applies. It doesn't matter how many PhDs somebody has or not. This work requires a certain strength of person, and it requires a practitioner who is quite able to stand up and be the leader in the relationship with the client. It calls for a leadership position on the part of the practitioner, and some people are not up to that, but so that's one of the criteria. So if you are interested, go to the richardstraumaprocess.com, click on the training page. All the information is there, and then you can click on that'll take you through to a calendar to make an appointment for a 20-minute conversation where all your questions can be answered. The next training, Marcel, when's the next possibility to do the course? In May, Marcel. It starts on the 10th of May online, and then the 3-day workshop is the 22nd to the 24th of May, I think. I think that's pretty clear. But if you go to the events page on the richardstraumaprocess.com, click on that, and there's one in May, one in August, and one in September, October this year. We've already had one with some fabulous people coming through. In May, we've got some wonderful people coming. We tend to attract some pretty extraordinary people, like these people here on this webinar, for example. So thank you. It's 1 minute to the hour. Thank you, Barry.
Judith,
for your time.
my pleasure.
Thank you, Barry.
Lovely to work with you all. Fantastic.
Yes, and Barry's, so that if you want some more information, there's also Barry's lovely radio program, radiooutthere.com, and our conversation from the other day will be there in about 24 hours. So, and thank you for that, Barry. It's always great to talk with you.
You too.
All right. There are some other questions there that we're not going to get to. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for investing your time, your energy. If this work resonates with you, because, the reality is, people, that what we're using is not working fast enough. It's not working effectively enough. There is a tsunami of pain, as Carol said earlier. There's a tsunami of pain out there. In my own family, there's been 3 suicides before I could do TRTP. It's horrendous. And the government is hemorrhaging in terms of finance with the cost of trauma, depression, anxiety. If this work resonates with you, if you have a compulsion, because most people, when they hear about this and it gets them, it really gets them. So if you are compelled, join us. Our small end point is to take this to the world and to change how mental health is done, and to change the lives of millions and millions of people. And we need those people who just think, well, we need to question the status quo. Just because we've done something the same way for a long time doesn't mean we should continue to do it. So we need to do something different. This is different. It is effective. We have our own research team going hell to the dozen, bringing the research on TRTP to the world. But connect with us. Let's talk. Join us. We are a warm, rat-baggy, irreverent bunch who are changing the world. Thank you. And thank you, Barry.
My pleasure. From one rat bag to another.
Yeah.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Barry.
And thanks everyone for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.